Did the American Revolution apply to all people? Weren't the Founding Fathers really just a bunch of rich old guys who only wanted to separate from Britain to form their own country where they could be the bosses in a new aristocracy? On the contrary, the influence of America's revolutionary principles can be clearly seen in changes regarding social class. According to Gordon Wood, independence ended any possibility that a hereditary nobility would arise in America. One's family background became far less consequential, and upward mobility became a far greater reality than in England or much of the rest of the world. The rigid hierarchical nature of English society had never really taken root in America anyway, although large plantation owners of the South had adopted some of the appearances of an aristocracy. Nevertheless, after independence, the democratic spirit flourished and had a leveling effect. Whereas previously all were aware that they had social superiors and inferiors, many Americans grew unwilling to accept such a static system. Part of this change in class was attributable to a decline in dependency, which in turn resulted from the wide availability of land. Many individuals who in England would have had little choice but to live and work on someone else's property could experience a life of unprecedented independence on their own freehold in America. Additionally, work, even menial labor, began to be seen as dignified and noble as individuals aspired to improve their lives and rise in society through their own merit, rather than based upon unearned privilege due to birth or family connections. This encouraged creativity and entrepreneurship amongst Americans, leading to innovation, productivity, and prosperity. Eventually, society and government had to begin responding to the needs and opinions of a growing population of ordinary people who possessed both economic power and political influence. In fact, Wood argues that by the early 1800s, it seemed as if there were only a middle class in America. In some ways, Americans could be said to have combined attributes of both the aristocracy and the working class. While many more people became educated, in part because it was considered essential to self-government in a republic, the lack of inherited wealth also made it common to work. Additionally, the growing presence of commerce made many items far more readily available, leading to a blend of lifestyles. People even appeared to be dressing similarly. The idea of the hard-working individual American using his or her freedom to lift himself or herself out of poverty became a cultural ideal as well. It is no wonder that during Frenchman Alexis de Tocqueville's visit to America in the 1830s, he observed that there were no peasants in the young republic, while in Europe they were seemingly everywhere. Changes in American society were reflected in government and law as well. Members of the middle class began to appear in the state legislatures. After the Revolutionary War, those who were loyal to Britain, opposed to democracy, or even aspired to become part of a new American nobility had either fled to Canada or returned to England. State lawmakers then proceeded to abolish primogeniture and entail, property laws that kept wealth within a family by requiring that land be passed down solely to the eldest son when a father died. Now, this practice had reflected assumptions that the eldest son would uphold his duty to his younger siblings who were dependent upon him. However, now land could be broken up and made more widely available. This inhibited the development of an aristocracy, helping to ensure that status would be based more on wealth, which could be earned, rather than birth, which was beyond anyone's control. Consequently, unlike many failed revolutions in which people were promised that land would be taken and redistributed, in America, it became possible to acquire property. This was new. The contention of some that support for the Constitution was strongest among property holders is correct, but it omits the fact that this was not a tiny elite. According to Mary Graybar, at the time of the Constitution's drafting, more than 3/4 of all American families owned property of some kind, including land, farms, debts, and certificates. This was virtually impossible in Europe, where land was much less plentiful and tended to remain in the same family for centuries. Societal changes also affected politics. In much of the rest of the world, the right to vote simply didn't exist. Even in England, voting was limited to a small minority of the population who could meet the property requirement. In the early decades of the American Republic, a far greater share of the population could vote, despite the existence of property requirements in some states. The wide availability of land made such requirements easier to meet, and the egalitarian nature of American society made these kinds of restrictions less acceptable. Consequently, they gradually began to fall away. In fact, due to the spirit of 1776 and the limited government nature of the Constitution, the states have been empowered to freely and steadily expand the franchise throughout American history. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and follow my Facebook page or subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.